My name is Samantha Julian, and I'm the Director of the Office of Energy Development, and we reside inside the Governor's office. We're about 1 year old. We've only been around a short amount of time, but I'll tell you a little bit of that genesis in just one moment. For me personally, my familiarity with nuclear is that when I lived in Wisconsin, I lived near a plant. When I lived in Germany, I lived near a plant. And then 2 years ago, I went to Brazil to see the construction and finishing of Angra 2 and the plans for Angra 3. So that's my personal familiarity with nuclear. So I think you'd asked us a little bit about how LINE, the commission, and how Idaho can move nuclear forward and help other states. And I think just by inviting us to participate and to speak to you is a good start for us. Governor Herbert has 4 main priorities in his administration, as you know, and they're energy, economic development, education, and self-determination. Of course, I always say energy first, but these are his 4 main priorities, and of course he'll be reelected in November, so he'll be here for another 4 years, and he has 1 more term after that. So this governor is going to be here for a while. He's been here for about 2.5, 3 years, and he'll be here, I'm assuming, for another 8. The governor did his 10-year energy plan. I believe most of you know that came out last year. And out of that plan, here's the call to action and objectives. The first call to action, of course, is for us to increase the production of electricity so that we can produce more than we consume. We do that currently. We're at about 18%, but the governor would like us to do a stretch goal of 25% more. Of course, advocating for responsible development, promoting policies for clean air and technology innovation to make development and energy efficiency promoted would be a good thing for our state. In his energy plan, he had 5 guiding principles that helped us move through this. I believe there were 6 subcommittees to this, and it took about a year to get this done. This is a collaboration between academia, state interests, actual energy developers. We had nonprofit organizations on this. And of course, free market development, as all Republicans would tell you, is the first priority and guiding principle. Mitigating impacts. In Utah, currently, some of our environmental impacts we're working on is sage-grouse, which I know that you're living in that current world right now. And air quality, not only in our urban areas, but actually where the most of our oil and gas is produced in the Uinta Basin, we're having some air quality issues out there that we need to conquer. Of course, this is a living document. This is a document that will be changing and moving. We do keep utility costs in mind, just like Idaho does. We have very, very low utility costs, not only in electricity, but in natural gas. And then energy independence. I think that phrase is thrown around a lot, and sometimes it's energy sustainability, sometimes it's independence. You will see that the governor will hit this 5th one quite some in his WGA energy platform that you'll be hearing about very soon. I think a few of you know that he's going to have that as his platform. The winter meeting, I believe, is scheduled for WGA the middle of November or end of November, and so he'll be talking about the energy platform there. The energy plan had 8 recommendations, and so I'm going to spend just a minute telling you what those recommendations are because our office is actually responsible for executing those. The first one was to create an office, and so they created us. There has not been a central energy office in the state of Utah in years. This is the 3rd time one has been put together. So this year, or this time, I would say, we focus on economic development and policy, and that's what will keep us going. So it's a different focus than previously. We want to keep our public lands open, much like Idaho. A lot of our lands are owned by the federal government, and we're dealing with things to that nature. You may have heard Gasco and Anadarko were approved. I believe Gasco is 3,400 wells, and Anadarko is going to be 1,400 wells. There's only about 9,000 wells going in the state of Utah right now, so you can only imagine this is half again as much that was just approved in this 1 year. That's a big deal. You will see a change. I don't think you'll see anything like North Dakota, of course, but you will see a big increase in economic development because of those approved wells. Enhancing technology. This is a big deal for us, and I mentioned this at lunch to a couple of people, but we have what's called the Research Triangle, and we just formed this last year, and this is an opportunity to take our 3 universities and get them collaborating more. And so the director of the Research Triangle resides in our office. His name is Jeff Muse, and he is former Oak Ridge National Laboratories for 18 years. He was Scientist of the Year, Science Communicator of the Year, and has a dozen patents, 3 of which are commercial products. And he served for the U.S. Senate as Science and Energy Policy Advisor for a while. And what we're hoping to do with this research triangle is somewhat of what you've already done with CASE, really getting your institutions to work together, not only with national labs, but the state itself. And so we've got a long way to go, but I was excited to learn more about your case recently. Review the role of tax incentives is important, and we'll talk about a tax incentive we have in our state that encourages nuclear development. When it comes to regulation, we are finding ourselves needing to educate our Public Service Commission on nuclear. Rocky Mountain Power's IRP plan, as you know, gets revised every so often, but right now if you were to look at their IRP plan, it's important to look at theirs because they do supply 82% of all the power in our state. And right now they see that nuclear would come in around 2035. And so many developers are saying, how do we improve that? How do we get that timeline shortened? Besides the financial issues we talked about this morning, what do we do in the state of Utah? And so we're looking to have a meeting. You'll hear about it pretty soon. We're going to have some Public Service Commission members from states like Florida come into our state. We've asked a couple other institutions to come into our state and really educate us about how do we diversify our portfolio to include nuclear in a more appropriate and quick manner. Reducing energy consumption statewide, of course, we'll have some energy efficiency programs coming out pretty soon. And I believe that you'll see in the WGA there will be an initiative that is an energy efficiency initiative. Diversifying transportation fuels. When we look at this for us is biomass and biofuel, and much like you, we deal with pinyon juniper, and we're trying to figure out what to do with that resource, how to get it to market. There's other transportation fuels in our state, oil shale and oil sands. I think you've heard recently of Red Leaf Resources is ahead of pretty much anyone. We also have a lot of oil sands development in our state, and so when we think of transportation fuels in Utah, we're not just thinking natural gas and biofuels, but we're also thinking shale and sands. And laying the foundation of baseload is where nuclear comes in. It's our responsibility to facilitate the dialogue. So last year at the Governor's Energy Summit, it was the first annual Governor's Energy Summit in Utah, we actually invited a nuclear panel to come in and speak, and that was kind of a big deal to really put it out in the market and really put it open in Utah. We do have some environmental groups that are pretty allegiant to not having development happen of any sort in nuclear in our state, and typically they have supporters from the California market that come in and make it interesting. So we are encouraged that we do want nuclear to be part of our base load. To do that, we are issuing a few studies. We're trying to get some research done. I think in 1982, the University of Utah did a study on nuclear, and that was the last time a real comprehensive study was done in our state. So we'll be doing a couple of those this year, and we will be engaging Idaho to do that. This gives you some numbers of where we're at. Again, this is last year's numbers, though. So you'll see that we have about 23,000 employees in energy. We feel like that's a lower number. Excuse me. The Department of Labor gives us that number, and just like Idaho, it's going to give you a little bit lower of a number. When they give you these numbers, this is how they view things. For an example would be, our office is the energy office, so our jobs should count as energy jobs, but they don't. They count as government jobs. Similar as in other markets. So sometimes when you see energy numbers, they look a little low because it could count as manufacturing instead. It could count as a design firm, but those are really energy jobs. So we find this number to be at least half again low where it should be. But what's important in Utah is the fact that energy workers, employees that work in the energy field, make 171% of the average wage of the rest of Utahns. That's pretty big. 171% of the average Utahn. That's great for our energy jobs. That's a ripple effect in our state. The bottom three numbers, this is something we could look to Idaho for, is understanding more about what our patents are like, our venture deals and public deals are in the state of Utah, and how we can encourage that in nuclear. Now let's talk about our office. Again, our office was created last year, 14 months ago. We are the single point of contact, the Central Energy Office. We do all resources. So it doesn't matter what it is, our office is supportive and move it forward, whether it's nuclear, oil shale, oil sands, coal, natural gas. We do lots of renewables. We did some very large projects. We helped eBay put solar panels on their data center in the state of Utah. We helped the University of Utah put solar panels on. We did about $2 million with those two projects. So we do all energy development in our state. We also track data going forward. A few years ago, if you asked me, Samantha, how many oil shale projects do you have in the state of Utah proposed? How many solar projects? Okay, if those projects, if 50% of those projects are successful, how many solar projects would you have in the state of Utah? How many jobs would that be? What's the tax revenue associated with that? We now forward project onto those tracking mechanisms so people can ask us, where is the forward momentum in the state of Utah? Our vision is to serve as the primary resource for advancing energy. We are a leadership in our mission to do economic development and to make energy independent, reliable, and affordable. What's most important about that is our public-private partnerships. We have a couple of new things coming out you'll hear about very soon that put those two together. We have 5 strategic objectives. The first one is policy. The second one is industry assistance. And what we mean by industry assistance is we hold their hand through the whole process. If someone wants to come in and develop any kind of product, we will introduce them to local communities, state government, all the regulatory agencies, the governor's office, anything they need from economic development incentives to getting their water permit done, we'll help them. And then relationship building. We're looking for some new funding opportunities. Our office is funded in 2 ways. So energy money comes in the state 2 ways, through our legislature and through DOE. And we want to diversify that. We want to make it different. We want to look at USDA. We want to look at DOD. We want to look at other organizations to bring in more energy money. We feel like that more money should be spent on the federal government side to Utah and the rural communities. An example is we've done some statistics on how much money DOE has given our state in research and development. You may have done the same thing. If you look and see how much money each state gets from the DOE on research and development, any given category, doesn't matter if it's coal or solar, you will see that Utah is at the bottom. We receive almost no money at all or support in research and development from DOE, period. Period. Energy education is another piece for us. We're going to have a campaign, and I'd be happy to share that. If you want to see those statistics and those graphs and information about how much Idaho receives compared to the population or compared to different things, I'd be happy to share that with you. Energy education is a big deal in our state. We really feel like we've got a couple programs going on in Utah with 4th graders. So we teach our 4th graders not only renewable energy, but we also teach them energy education through conventional energy. Other things we need to do is educate our public. An example is we might not have actual nuclear facilities in our state, but we have the uranium. We have about 150 uranium jobs mining. We have one of the only working mills in the United States for uranium product. We also have Westinghouse. Westinghouse has a lot of business in the nuclear industry, and they are doing that business in Utah. And Peterson Inc. I know that Peterson Inc. recently bought a facility also in southern Idaho, and they have the facilities together, and they create, and I'm going to say this completely wrong because I always think of coffins, but the casks that hold the waste, the large casks, those are manufactured in Utah. A couple of things that we did this last year, we do have an alternative energy development incentive, and this is a tax incentive that nuclear generation facilities can apply for, and it's 75% of all state revenue comes back to them for a 20-year period. So if a nuclear facility were to be built, once they have their permits, we will start engaging whenever they're ready. They tell us when they want that 20-year timeline to start. We give them 75% of their taxes back, and that's sales, income, and payroll. The next one is an infrastructure authority. This is a new piece that we put through this last year, and this piece is for energy delivery. So a lot of times there's projects in the middle of nowhere, and they need to get the infrastructure, whether it's a pipe or a transmission line, and there's not money to do that. So we put this in place to have a bonding mechanism for whether it's renewable energy, whether it's a rural community needing natural gas for a particular project. This is a piece that is a bonding mechanism that will support energy. Some of the things that we've done this last year and what we'll be doing was helping the governor with the WGA platform. Again, some sneak peeks into his platform. I believe he gave those to you in June, but they're going to cover energy education, alternative transportation, energy efficiency. Oh, you're going to catch me high on this one. And getting the states to put their plans together. So each state, as you know, has an energy plan, but how do we put those together in one piece and see how we meet together and how we can move forward? Then we can take that to DC as a team together. So those are the things you'll hear this next year. We also worked with the BLM to get our solar and our oil shale PEISs done. I'm not sure that the PEIS on the solar has been very successful. I think you've seen that they've picked 3 zones in the state of Utah. What they're doing with this is they're pre-doing all of this work so that when a solar developer comes in It's kind of a product sitting there for them already. All the work's been done. However, on the oil shale one, this one's not that way. This is kind of opposite. This is what we might say is a little resistance that we're seeing from the federal side on oil shale. It seems like they're having a hard time changing the leases from more of a demonstration to commercial. So if somebody wanted to commercially do one of these projects on BLM land, it wouldn't happen. It would happen on state lands right now, which is unfortunate. We've also done a lot of coordinating with our federal delegation. As you might know, the new energy advisor to Governor Herbert has been named in May. Cody Stewart, I believe that you might be familiar with some of his workings back in D.C. He worked for Bishop as well as Hansen. He's back there for 10 years, and as well as his uncle is obviously in the administration as well. So we will be working with them more closely. Nuclear in Utah. And you've all heard of the Blue Castle project. This is the project that's proposed in Green River. This is a large utility scale project that will be, some of the power will stay in Utah, and I'm assuming some of the power will go out because it's a pretty large project depending on who you talk to. It's about 1,100 to, 1,800, but I'm going to say 1,100 megawatts on that one. And so that's the most popular project that's being talked about right now in our state down by Green River. You do know that the state has a little bit of anxiety over the waste. I know everyone does right now because there isn't really, unfortunately, a plan. But, during the Huntsman administration and even now, there's some residual effects of people being a little concerned. I know the Republican Governors Association I don't know if they've actually publicly issued it, but they're going to be publicly issuing their energy platform policy. And you will see that there is some conversations about what do we do and some suggestions to get there. But Utah's still a little nervous. We are a little nervous of it going through our state to get to Nevada and maybe other locations. Governor Herbert is having a balanced conversation on nuclear. There is no official position in regard to anything particular like, no, we won't do this, or no, we won't do that, or yes, we absolutely have to do this, because we need to see the projects come forth. And if you ever talk to Governor Herbert, he really wants the market to determine things, and he's one of those people that absolutely says the market will determine it. So whether the power stays in Utah or goes out, whether it's small nuclear, which is being considered, or something else. In Utah, we're truly on the path of enlightenment. We're truly trying to educate ourselves on nuclear. We're not where Idaho is. We would lean on Idaho to figure some of those things out and answer some of those questions as we do education, as we make executive decisions, as we look at different policy pieces, we would look to Idaho. When we look at nuclear, we do look at some of the partnerships we have. In the state of Utah, a couple of years ago, we established a group called MIC, and it stands for Military Installation Energy Consortium. And so we pull all of our military installations together once every other month to talk exclusively about environmental and energy issues. This has proved very fruitful, as the Department of Defense just announced this week that they are in partnership with DOI to do some renewable energy. We're also talking to them about some energy efficiency measures and potentially nuclear down the road, small. So we do really rely on our installations. As you know, Hill Air Force Base is one of the largest energy consumers in the country when it comes to military installations, and I want to say that they are the #1 consumer of energy in our state, not only fuel for the planes, but electricity itself. The LDS Church, of course, is always looking for sustainability measures, whether it's solar or whatever else comes along that they think about. BYU, USU, the University of Utah, and Salt Lake Community College are all working in partnership for jobs and energy. They're all on the platform with the governor. And so to us, we really feel like Line's mission and partnership would be of the utmost value to Utah. It would make sense to our institutions, and we could really use the guidance in the state of Utah. So for us, the education component of INL, of what INL does, what INL has to offer, and really making it almost like a piece of Utah would be a good start for us. Truly relying on them, not just to come down for a summit or participate in an event, but really consulting and spending more time. Collaborating with WGA and the tie-ins, there is an energy education piece in that, and maybe we need to start doing a better effort of educating the public on nuclear. We're not the same as other countries. Our water is different, our environment is different, the technology is going to be different. And then into starting the discussion with research institutions is coming back to CASE. Again, I think CASE is a great example, and we would love to work with you more through our research triangle. Now, I mentioned USTAR up there, and I believe you're already probably aware of them, and that stands for Utah Science, Technology, and Research Initiative. And that's the initiative that commercializes the technology that comes out of the University of Utah and USU. The research triangle brings in that third component of BYU to make the match all together. So when you asked a couple of the groups this morning, you know, what do you want us to do? What are your asks or what are your recommendations? I'll come back to something I mentioned this morning or a few minutes ago, which is support from DOE in the nuclear industry. You know, how can we get them to support more education and training? How can we get them to really do some of the work that needs to be done? An example is carbon sequestration. And when the cap and trade was going on, people invested in that. The mining companies, energy companies, and now it's fully subsidized, right? The DOE is the only people really paying, if they're even still paying for it, in the carbon sequestration market. Why not shift that over to technologies that are really happening and happening now? Our office is also doing some work. We're going to start traveling to the Southeast. I had the pleasure of going to the Republican Governors Association meeting in June and learned that there's a lot more going on in the Southeast United States than the rest of the country really believes. They do want to move forward on things. They're doing all the due diligence behind it. They're doing the work. Financing is an issue, but they're doing more than what people think. And so we're going to be taking some trips down there to educate ourselves on what the state had to do. There's some examples I received when I was there. One state was telling, they're having a drought this year. And one state was telling me that when they have a drought and more water is pumped, they don't make any money from that extra water pumped. And the other state said, we do. In drought years, we're going to make more money as a state because the water is pumped. That's important to think about. Things that we can do with INL, hybrid systems. How do we put fossil and nuclear together or fossil and renewables together? How do we make that happen? We feel like that INL could really help with that. Also, electric roadways and battery technology and different things with vehicles. Our state is going to be doing a lot this year. We're going to be pushing some things with natural gas as well as biofuels, so expect to see that. And then ARPA-E. Excuse me, last year we were able to bring in the head of ARPA-E last year for the Governor's Energy Development Summit, and now he's switched positions, but he really told us that it was going to be in transmission and, or excuse me, in transportation and transmission, and that we should work with our laboratories. That's what his advice was, is you really need to start really working with them and leaning on them. WGA specifics. Again, we talked about that assistance of developing a 10-year regional plan. It's not just going to be for the state of Utah. Thinking about R&D needs unique to the West rather than other places. And then in January, you're going to see that we're going to have another economic summit, or excuse me, energy summit in the state of Utah for the governor. This will be WGA focused, so you'll see a lot of WGA components in there, whether not only some of the initiatives and have breakout sessions, but actually some important folks related to WGA will be at our summit. Last year we had 1,100 people there, and the governor has asked that we not make it too big this year, so we're going to stay at about 1,600, but we did it last year in 3 months and had 1,100 people. So this year we're going to try and keep it quality and make it about 1,600 people, but we will be inviting the labs near us, other state energy offices, as well as WGA. So I know I talked pretty fast. I tried to stay on time. I'd be delighted to answer any questions.
Thank you. That was an excellent presentation. Gentlemen, ladies, questions? Dr. Rudin, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Samantha, thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it. Just a quick question. You mentioned that one of the guiding principles that you have as a state is to minimize and mitigate impacts on human environment and wildlife habitat. I just wanted to know, has your office or any other entity within the state of Utah begun work on identifying those risks or impacts and understanding those impacts and developing efforts to minimize those or mitigate those? Or is that forthcoming?
Sorry, and you're talking particularly nuclear, correct?
Yeah, across the board.
Okay.
Yes.
So for nuclear, we're going to be commissioning a couple studies this year. We have to. We have to understand our own environment to do that. And so we're going to be asking some groups, 2 of them, to come in and help us assess water, land, animal issues, obviously. And so we will be doing that. You'll see that this year. We're hoping to actually have not only commission that studies, but have them finished this year as well. So we do need to understand our environment, and again, we're on the road to enlightenment at this point. Other things that we're doing in regard to the environment is our sage-grouse plan. Our goal is to be around 90% of our sage-grouse. We only own 14% of the whole region's sage-grouse, but we're hoping to actually save 90%. We're going to have one of the more aggressive plans. You will see that we're very aggressive. Another issue is air quality for us in the Uinta Basin. The air quality standards are quite high compared to what the standard is. We're trying to figure that out. That's a problem in Wyoming as well because it is a wintertime ozone, a science that is not understood. And so this last year we pulled together about $4 million, just over $4 million with private industry, the different state agencies and federal agencies together to do a study on that. So we had stations out there, we had employees out there, we had the balloons out there, we spent a lot of time out there. What do we do? How is this different? The problem is we're thinking if you change one thing, if you say, let's throw an example out there, make all the vehicles out there natural gas rather than regular gasoline. Or if we electrified the grid. So if we actually gave electricity to those producers, because that's part of the problem, is they don't have the electricity out there to do their production because it's a production field. Would that really fix the wintertime ozone? Or is that just going to do an offset and mess it up? And so the unfortunate thing is it didn't snow this year in the state of Utah. It didn't really snow, but they were able to get some baseline information. And the study will go on for next year for sure, and they're looking for funding after that. So those are just a couple examples of ways we're looking to move on environmental concerns. Are there any particular you were thinking of?
No, no. Thank you.
No problem. Please.
Thank you, Chair. This is the issue I'm going to ask you about is not really energy development, but a few years ago, the Go-Shoots wanted to build a facility to take nuclear waste. Whatever happened to that issue with Utah?
I grew up out there. I grew up in Tooele County, and I went to school with the people that lived on the reservation out there. I went to school with them, grew up out there. So the Bears, the Bull Creeks, and the Moons mostly. And that was during the Huntsman administration. And I don't think it will come back. It's not probably going to happen. If that's what you're asking. Is there another opportunity for them to try that again, if that's where you're going? I don't think that you'll see that. I think the population out there has diminished quite some. Their interest has diminished as far as we know. I haven't heard anything in years, and I'm from there, in regard to reestablishing that or starting that over again. I haven't heard anything out there. It's kind of a dead project. In regard to what happened during the Huntsman administration, I was not there during the Huntsman administration. I do know that there were some questions on transporting it. So is it on the roads? Is there danger? Is there safety? Is there enough regulation to protect the Utahns for other people's waste coming in? Is there an issue with the fact that Utah would be taking in waste, and could we handle that? So there's a couple different issues that were along those lines. I wish I could better answer that for you.
Yeah. Have you discussed with the tribes there about this energy development?
In that particular area, there aren't resources in Tooele County that I'm aware of in regard to oil, gas, coal. There's no shale or sands. There might be some solar. That would probably be one of the ones out there. There may be some geothermal, and there's some testing going on in that area. Right by that reservation, there is two military installations, Dugway Proving Ground and Hill Air Force Base, and that's a fly zone, actually, as you might know. And so we're looking at geothermal, and there's test wells going on right now to see if there's a resource right there. In regard to other locations in the Uinta Basin, a lot of the production that happens on lands owned by Native Americans, whether it's, they've got a couple different phrases for it, but it does happen on there, much of it. Private industry goes right on and does production.
Okay, thank you.
Commission, any other questions? If I may just add, Samantha, this is very impressive. And for someone who's only been in there for 14 months, you said, very impressive. I think there's layers of crossover, and I would just say on behalf of this commission, but on behalf of the state, we're very interested in these conversations you're recommending. I think there's a few, like I said, layers of crossover that have already started, and I would just pay tribute to your state. In one specific area, we recently announced our own tech transfer program, and the legislature passed it this last year, and we call ours iGEM for Idaho Global Entrepreneurial Mission. But what's been fun in that process is USTAR has been very supportive in collaborating with us. and they've continued to provide that support. And so we're looking forward to a long-standing relationship there. And so I think we can just build on that and many other conversations that we need to have. So suffice it to say, we will definitely be in touch.
Okay.
And we'll look forward to many of these
Thank you.
Discussions.
Thank you,
Thanks
Chairman.
for being here.
Absolutely.
Appreciate that.
Appreciate it.
Okay.